Now let's go to the big screen where we review any new releases. The first one up is Zero Dark 30, which Scott and myself saw. Anyway, it's a Catherine Bigelow-directed film. She directed The Hurt Locker. And it covers about a decade of work that a team of military and CIA operatives did. And it uses the character of Maya, played by Jessica Chastain, as a central figure, spearheading the efforts to find Osama Bin Laden, that guy that orchestrated the September 11th attacks. Just in case somebody didn't know that. Through torture, drop leads, changing agendas, the film follows it through and culminates in roughly about, a 30-minute finale showcasing the raid on Bin Laden's compound.
Mm-hmm.
The story itself, I mean, that's pretty much the whole story. That's all it's about. I thought this was really like watching a documentary more than a cohesive story. Mm-hmm. I realize the film's getting tons of attention because of the subject matter, but the story is all over the place. I don't really consider it a solid narrative. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like it flows. What did you think, Scott?
Well, I mean, that's kind of how her movies are. The Hurt Locker was very much the same way, I think. That almost felt like a documentary style free roaming camera kind of thing, where, and this is the same thing, where it's not like a narrative, like you're saying. It's very much like you're. Well, obviously, it's based on true information. We don't know how true, obviously, but. Yeah.
There's conflicting reports. Is it true? Is this true? Right. Is it not true?
And, it's very controversial. We'll probably never know how accurate that is.
Well,
but
the one thing I've read is that Maya is a culmination of character, of real people. And basically she's there just to have one person to follow through the whole story.
Right. Well, and the film even says at the beginning that everything is based on accounts of people. So everything that is in this movie, someone said it happened. How accurate that is, we'll never know. Mm-hmm. But I look at it as a movie. It feels like a documentary, but at the end of the day, it's a movie.
What do you think of the acting? I think, honestly, Jessica Chastain, I think she gives a wrenching performance. As Maya, she's the one character the movie centers on, and she does a phenomenal job.
She's obviously the standout role in the film. There's some other couple cool performances, but she does a full range of emotion. And I was worried when the movie started. I thought it was going to be this timid, boring, girl in the CIA or whatever. And she goes on opposite ends of the spectrum. And there's one scene in particular where I wanted to stand up and, and cheer for her. It was really
Is it a
powerful.
spoiler to say what that is?
When she's telling off the one head guy.
Oh yeah. When she's trying to get things done and they won't listen, so she's all up in their face.
Seriously, it was like a "you go girl" moment. Like I
Did she really just "you go girl"?
You go girl.
Wow. It reminded me very much. If you haven't seen Homeland, Brian, you would relate to this. Claire Danes' Carrie from Homeland.
Yep.
It's very much like in that vein, where she's a little nutty, but she's all about getting it done, and she doesn't care who gets in her way, and she's gonna make it happen. Mm-hmm. Very determined, focused, and never someone that needs to be thought of as a woman. Those are my favorite female characters, the ones that you don't even have to classify them as female.
Right.
That's why you don't have to say that you go girl. But hey, the rest of the cast. Throwaways. I couldn't tell you, and I don't care about any of them. Jason Clarke as Dan is about the only one that really stood out. He's the torturer who turns diplomat, and he kind of gets Maya going on the case. But otherwise, all the roles are filled by character actors like Kyle Chandler and Harold Perrineau from Lost. In those blink or you miss them performances. I mean, literally, they're gone. You never think about them again.
Or Sons of Anarchy.
Or Sons of Anarchy. Well, that was one season. Nobody else stands out. I mean, it's really Jessica Chastain and everybody else. Mm-hmm. What did you think about the production? How did you think they handled it?
I thought that they did a really good job of conveying the tone of how things are, kind of over there in Pakistan is where it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
it was all over the Middle East.
Right, it was all over. But I mean, it kind of the final act, like you mentioned, that last 30 minutes with the final raid was very intense, and I thought it felt a lot more of how you would expect a raid like that to go, as opposed to the hoorah, storm the castle kind of moments that we get in a lot of military flicks. Mm-hmm. It was things could go wrong any second now kind of thing. You felt very intense, even though you knew how it was going to end.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. But
I was hoping for a twist at the end, like he escapes. Just darts out the back. Well, production-wise, I thought this is a very by-the-numbers political thriller. Until that last half an hour, none of the directions stood out as Oscar-worthy. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were talking before this came out that Catherine Bigelow should get a Best Director Oscar and all this other stuff. Now that I've seen it, I don't agree with that at all. I understand why she didn't get nominated for Best Director. It doesn't stand out. I don't think there's anything phenomenal about the direction until that last half hour.
Right.
The Hurt Locker that she directed, that's a different story. I thought she did a wonderful job with that movie. This movie is just, I think she did what she intended to do. It's just not Oscar worthy. I thought up until that last half hour, nothing really did much for me, but the last half hour is very intense stuff. It was shot very well, even though you know exactly what's going to happen. There's some things I didn't know about the raid, which I found out after the fact were true, that they showcased, and that was pretty intense to watch, I gotta admit. Even though I know exactly how it ends, I'm sitting there watching going, ooh, what's going to happen? I actually thought he might make it out, which I'm telling you would be a great twist. So what's your final verdict?
This is one of those movies I'm glad I saw, but I'll never watch it again. Kind of like The Hurt Locker. I watched that once, but I enjoyed it, had a good time with it, but I won't watch it again. What I did like about this movie is it's not, like I mentioned before, just a hoorah, go America movie. Especially the first half hour, 45 minutes or so, were very hard to watch, for me anyway. Doesn't make you feel good about America with the torturing and that kind of thing.
I felt fine about it. Torture the fuck out of them. I don't care.
Yeah.
Don't care. Look, they do showcase, at the very beginning of the movie, they showcase a lot of torturing. And obviously, America says that they've stopped doing that. And this is, the waterboarding and everything else. Now, I get why they had to do it. That's why I say I'm not fine with the concept of torture. I think you should treat everybody with civil rights. But they're on a war land. They're at war. I understand that things are different at war than they are here in a peaceful nation and everything else. So, but I do also agree that your principles are only important if you apply them when you think that it's least convenient. So,
yeah, it was hard for me to watch. So, I also thought the film was a little long, like you mentioned.
It was very long.
It was, I do feel it was important to convey a lot of the feelings and frustrations that this character was having, but it didn't have to be that long. I was looking at my watch on more than one occasion. It's hard for me to give a really high score to a one-and-done kind of movie, but it does get some high marks for some genuine uneasy feelings throughout, and for that I give it a 6.50 out of 10.
Tense Tot Chastain deserves an Oscar now. I agree. She's the only person in this movie that deserves an Oscar. But I just don't see all the hype for Best Picture. I give it a solid 6.5 out of 10, and that's solely based on that last half hour and Jessica Chastain. I just don't think it's as good as people think.